Hello, this is the argument for the death penalty. This is,
I'm Alejandra.
and she is pro death penalty, and I am Miriam, and I am anti death penalty.
Okay, starting with the pro side. Should the death penalty be allowed? Well, when thinking about the role of the death penalty in our justice system, most cannot ignore the complex and nuanced perspectives surrounding this disputed topic. Advocates argue that allowing the death penalty serves as a powerful deterrent, as a source of closure for victims' families, and a fitting response to crimes deemed irreversibly heinous. It is critical to take a look at the justification supporting the retention of the death penalty, acknowledging the moral and societal connections essential to this debate. So, with all that said, the implementation of the death penalty is a necessary measure within our justice system. The most important point of the death penalty being instituted is deterrence. Deterrence dissuades potential offenders from committing heinous crimes due to the severe consequences that they may face. For example, a quote from the confirmed government death penalty site is, in 1973, Isaac Ehrlich employed a new kind of analysis which produced results showing that for every inmate who was executed, 7 lives were spared because others were deterred from committing murder. In fact, Ted Bundy, he went through the death penalty. He was on death row for a while. He was executed via the electric chair, and from the same website of the death penalty government official site, 2 national polls have found that support for capital punishment in the United States remains near half-century lows despite record high perception that local crime has increased, meaning that the death penalty is preventing, the more the death penalty is implemented, the less crime is about. The second reason that the death penalty should be instituted and strongly used is justice for the victims' families. Justice for the victims' families provides a sense of closure and justice to the families of victims. It's kind of very fair. It's fair in the sense that it provides an eye for an eye. It's fair in the sense that it provides justice for the families, and it's fair in the sense that it provides closure. Robert Macy, a district attorney of Oklahoma City, described his concept of the need for retribution in one case, where in 1991 a young mother was rendered helpless and made to watch as her baby was executed. The mother was then mutilated and killed. The killer should not lie in some prison with 3 meals a day, clean sheets, cable TV, family visits, and endless appeals for justice to prevail. Some killers just need to die. Which sounds brutal, but honestly, it's for the best. And finally, irreversible crimes are just really brutal crimes that should not be tolerated under any circumstance, which is another reason for the death penalty. Gerald Cogan, a former Florida Supreme Court Chief Justice, excerpts from a speech given in Orlando, Florida, October 23rd, 1999. These are excerpts from his speech. Quote, "And how about those people who are still sitting on death row today, who may be factually innocent but cannot prove their particular case very simply because there is no DNA evidence in their case that can be used to exonerate them? Of course, in most cases, you're not going to have that kind of DNA evidence, so there's no way and there's no hope for them to be saved from what may be one of the biggest mistakes that our society can make." That whole quote basically means that the death penalty is not executed immediately, and in most cases it is because they go through a thorough process to verify the accused is guilty. So those who argue that the death penalty shouldn't be used because what if you kill an innocent person, irreversible crimes are basically just so brutal that it's kind of obvious, and that's where the death penalty would be implemented. Finally, for many who are against the death penalty argue that it is unethical and cruel. However, the vicious acts criminals committed are equally as vile and vicious, if not worse. Many criminals probably have multiple victims, which only extends the brutality of their crimes. And most people who are actually against the death penalty claim religion. It's just, it's ungodly. But in the Bible, quote, this is Romans 13, 1-4, let every person be subjected to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, he who resists that God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. If you do wrong, be afraid, for the authority does not bear the sword in vain. He is the servant of God to execute his wrath on the wrongdoer. So consider supporting the death penalty as a crucial tool in upholding justice. Advocate for its retention, which emphasizes the potential deterrent effect on heinous crimes, the closure it may bring to victims' families, and a necessity in cases where evidence overwhelmingly supports the ultimate consequence for the most irreversible and severe offenses. Active engagement can contribute to shaping a criminal justice system that balances punishment with a societal need for safety and retribution. And now Miriam.
Yes, and now for the anti-death penalty. So, from the beginning of time, wrongdoers of society have been punished by death. Guillotines in the French Revolution, hangings in the witch trials, public executions in the Roman Empire. We now look back at such executions as unnecessary and too harsh of a punishment. But history loves to repeat itself, and society always allows it. Why is it that when we look back, these actions seem so clearly wrong, but when it happens now, it's referred to as justice? Justice can never be served through murder. The death penalty should be completely banned for the sake of atonement, for those who get wrongfully convicted, and for its blatant lack of effectiveness in deterring crime. So with the death penalty, the criminal will not suffer the same fate as their victims. These criminals have made their victims endure torture, face extreme pain, and have traumatized the victims' families. These criminals will be getting the easy way out: instant death, no suffering. These criminals should spend the rest of their lives rotting away in prison as a way of atoning for the atrocities they've committed. With or without the death penalty, they will receive the rightful treatment that they deserve, such as Jeffrey Dahmer. He was convicted of killing 16 young men, and in jail, rather than being put on death penalty, after 2 years of incarceration, he was beat to death by an inmate, which may sound very harsh, but it's true that he suffered much more by the hands of that inmate than he ever would in a execution. The primary means of execution in the United States, as stated by Britannica, have been hanging, electrocution, the gas chamber, firing squad, and lethal injection, all resulting in death within 15 minutes or less. The most common method of capital punishment is lethal injection, which usually ends the prisoner's life within only 2 minutes. That's no suffering. That's not making up for anything that they did to their victims. The death penalty can also result in a person who is wrongly convicted to be stripped of their life. Racial bias and other biases also play a part in determining the fate of a valuable human life. Claiming that there has been no official proof of wrongful death penalty convictions is completely ignorant to the abuse of power and the state of corruption that takes place in the American legal system. All legal systems. If an individual gets wrongfully killed in the hands of the federal government, then the same government also has the same power to hide the truth. The death penalty cannot be considered a form of justice because it is not and has never been fair for all. As stated by the Equal Justice Initiative, race still influences who is sentenced to death and executed in America today. The data in Georgia has actually gotten worse. People convicted of killing white victims are 17 times more likely to be executed than those convicted of killing black victims. Black Americans make up 41% of death row convictions, yet the population of Black Americans in the entire country is only 13%. Another piece of evidence from the Death Penalty Information Center is a study by Columbia University Law School found that 2/3 of all capital trials contained serious errors. When cases were retried, over 80% of the defendants were not sentenced to death and 7% were completely acquitted. Thus, for every 8.3 people executed, we have found one person on death row who should never have been convicted. Okay, also, the death penalty is completely ineffective in deterring crimes. The majority of crimes committed that constitute capital punishment are usually not premeditated or in the heat of the moment. This is referred to as a crime of passion, meaning the crime happened in the heat of the moment and was not planned out. Even without the threat of the death penalty, if the fear of severe punishment was enough to deter crime, wouldn't the concept of long-term imprisonment also be a punishment severe enough to deter a criminal? Also from the Death Penalty Information Center, the vast preponderance of the evidence shows that the death penalty is no more effective than imprisonment in deterring murder, and that it may even be an incitement to criminal violence. The National Research Council of the National Academies concluded that studies claiming the death penalty as a deterrent are fundamentally flawed. Studies have shown that murder rates, including murders of police officers, are consistently higher in states that have the death penalty, while the states that abolish the death penalty have the lowest rates of police officers killed in the line of duty. So some may claim that capital punishment can be the only means of justice when referring to extremely vicious and heinous crimes, an eye for an eye. But two wrongs do not make a right. For this reason, many victim families even denounce the use of the death penalty as well. No matter the severity of the crime, it should not be in the hands of the legal system to decide someone's fate. Who are we to play God? The system should demonstrate higher principles than to denounce the value of human life. If the criminal gets killed by capital punishment, then what is the difference between the killer and the system? Is it morality? Is it power? How can such actions be justified? From the Death Penalty Information Center, encouraging our base motives of revenge, which ends in another killing, extends the chain of violence. Bud Welch's daughter, Julie, who was killed in the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. Although his first reaction was to wish those who committed this terrible crime be killed, he ultimately realized that such killings is just simply vengeance, and it was vengeance that killed Julie. Vengeance is a strong and natural emotion, but it has no place in our justice system. So I want everyone listening to know one thing. Whether you agree with the death penalty or not, I want you to know that this law only causes further pain. Use logic, use science, use evidence. And then you as well will be able to come to the same conclusion as I have. Only then can we work together to completely abolish the death penalty and work towards a system that will protect your life, your rights, and serve true justice for all. Thank you.